Thanks everybody for being here in the after lunch spot. I'm here to talk about partnering with green coffee suppliers. I thought the morning was fantastic. And before I forget about it, I wanted to just echo a couple of things that Rob said, and also Camila. It really relates to part of what I was thinking through when I was trying to come up with the content for this presentation. But Rob mentioned know your why in coffee sourcing. And I thought that was great. I mean, coming back to that was really, really helpful. Because so gluten-free coffee can be so fantastic and so varied and so fascinating. It can be very intoxicating. You want to buy everything. But sometimes that doesn't work out so well on all the coffees. So knowing your why is good. And then also just the perspective of Camila and the perspective from origin has been something that I've tried to throughout my career. That's actually where I got started, as Connie said, doing some research in Costa Rica when I was a grad student. And it's so important to keep that in mind in green coffee sourcing. What Camila was saying about only 70% of the coffee that's being produced by a producer is even eligible for export, in her example. Can you imagine if only 70% of the coffee that you roasted was eligible to be sold? That's a hit right there. And so it's really, really important to remember that the producers take the vast majority of the risk of anyone in the supply chain, the vast majority of the risk. And just keeping that in mind when partnering with your entire supply chain can get you really, it can work well for everyone. So I thought a lot. I thought a lot about what to share today because I think there's a really wide range of experiences in the room. Some people in this room have been doing coffee as long or longer than I have. They know so much about origin. They know so much about calibration with customers and producers all along the way. Others are just getting started in green coffee sourcing. Some may not have done any of that. I'm sure I know that we had some hands raised earlier, but how many people here buy the green that you're engaging with? Okay, right on. Awesome. That's great. How many people have had the chance to travel to origin? Raise your hand. Okay, right on. Awesome. How many people would like to do that at some point? Yeah. That's great. All right, cool. All right, well, that's super helpful. So I'm going to get going here. I'm going to tell you. So one thing I tried to do in the presentation was also put cool pictures in it. Because after lunch, and you got all farmed up, and maybe you're a little sleepy. But I'm going to tell you where the pictures are, because I'm going to try to be honoring the people whose photos were taken. This is at the Bay of Mesa Mill in Antigua, Guatemala. Okay, so the three things I'm going to talk about are basically these three subjects. One, calibrate and communicate. Keep track. And know where you fit in. That is Montessori Farm in Caribbean Peru. So I'm going to set up a little context here. I chose this photo for the subject of calibrate and communicate because it illustrates something really vividly, which is talking about the entire supply chain in one row, which is really rare experience. And really cool experience. You can do it. This photo was taken at the Katiara Cooperative in Aceh, in northern Sumatra, in Indonesia. We worked with Stumptown has moved to Katiara for quite a few years. And it illustrates two things that are important to me. One, as I said, is having a lot of calibration along the supply chain and sharing information. So communicating and sharing information. In this example, we're with, that's me to the right of Jim Kelso, who's the head of quality assurance for Stumptown. We've got data from Atlas. We've got a number of members of the cooperative, the head of QC for the co-op, the head of the co-op, and we have a wholesale customer in the mix as well. And it's a really extraordinary opportunity to actually share an experience of cupping with everyone and calibrate, compare notes, understand how they see our profile, how we see our profile, calibrate in terms of scoring. If you're using a Q rating system, are we within a point of each other or not? And so it's really a rich and wonderful experience. It can also get you really consistent coffees that you're looking for, but it does not have to happen this way. That's a really high bar. Don't have to go to origin to do this. That is not what you need to do. But I like the vivid memory of this because as it turned out, they knew what we wanted as well as we did. They've been working with them for a long time, so we hope so. It was really affirming and really fun. The other thing that this illustrates to me is just, I referenced a little bit earlier, just trying to understand things from Origin's perspective. I had an atypical path into coffee. Because as I said, I started by doing my master's research on coffee. And so I went to Costa Rica and spent 3 months interviewing farmers. And I was taken under the wing of an exporter there who taught me to cup. And are you kidding me? He's not going to want to stay coffee for the rest of the month. So that's what he's telling me. It was really. And so that was really cool. And I lived for about a year in El Salvador after that. And again, I worked in the coffee industry there. And then the first time in the United States working coffee was with Sustainable Harvest Coffee Importers, some of my original colleagues up here in a room. And that was the first time I worked for an importer. And prior to being at Stumptown, I worked at Whole Coffee, which is a really big global coffee trading firm. And I worked mainly with the Origins on a sustainability and a sourcing strategy that they could do globally across about 10 different origins. So that is to say what's important to me personally, which is trying to understand the perspective of Origin and really help to work well together with Origin. It's information exchange has gotten a lot easier, obviously. Producers are totally connected to the internet, just like everybody else. You can see what's going on in some ways, but you want to take as much out of the guessing game out of it as possible, and also just stay as frequently in communication as you can with partners. So calibrate and communicate. This is a dog from the Montessori farm as well in Costa Rica. Yeah, trying to keep it lively here. Puppies, they inspire people. We had really, really popular cat earlier in Camila's presentation, so that was good. So calibrate and communicate with your importer partners and the export partners, with producers where possible, at the level of offer, pre-ship, arrival. And when we're talking about communication, I think it's really important to distinguish like both cupping scores, but then also profiles that you're looking for. And you can do this at any level of detail. Cupping scores, if you're using Q grading scores or whatever forms you're using, that's helpful as long as you're calibrating with your importer partners to share those. We at Stumptown, we use Q grading, and I think we have 7 certified Q graders, so we're taking it very seriously, trying to be calibrated with one another, but then also with our supply chains, because that just adds a level of transparency, right? We're not just rejecting something out of hand or approving something without an explanation as to why. And the other piece of it is the profile. So as you all also know, coffee can have a BN 86 and 2 different coffees from both BN 86, and the taste totally different. So different profiles that you're sourcing for different reasons, share that information, share what you're looking for with your importer partner. Just share it, and that will help you. Give timely feedback. That's the other thing. If you're evaluating a pre-ship is the biggest example. It's really important to get that information back to the suppliers as quickly as possible. There's a lot of money tied up in those approvals, and also when it arrives. So just being timely and keeping the flow going through the supply chain can be really, really good. And then, as I said, cup in person wherever you choose, or whenever you can. I also want to say that this is stuff that I'm pulling from a variety of experiences. We're trying to do this all the time, and sometimes we have pretty good practices around this. It's also things that I've observed and learned over the years. And so a lot of what I'm sharing today, I also want to say with some humility. I'm not just trying to get advice, but rather share what I've seen and learned over the years, because no one ever does it all right. And sometimes you learn the hard way. We don't calibrate, you don't get kind of feedback, basic. All right. So calibrate and communicate. That's what I had to say about that. There's more to say. The next section is on keeping track. And I thought that Rob this morning had a lot of great data around that as well, like keeping notes. You think you're going to remember the specific attributes of the most spectacular coffee you've ever purchased and roasted. But if you want to be it the next year, it helps to have notes and records of what you did. So this photo is just meant here to be beautiful. This is in Tolima, Colombia, at a farm, the El Brand Group, in Trinidad that we worked with for many, many years. I took that photo. And it's a good reminder as well. I'll get to this in the last section, just of how totally beautiful origin can be, and how enrapturing it can be to be able to travel there. All right, so keeping track and keeping records. There's a few things I already touched on, quality scores and notes. I think for roasters, obviously operating a roasting company, it's really good to also, you're going to anticipate how you're going to use it. Again, going back to, I think, Rob's point of knowing your why. Why are you buying this coffee? Are you going to buy it to be single origin? It's going to be a standout? Are you buying for like a limited time offering? Is it something you want all year long? Is it going to be ingredient in a blend? Really thinking about what the why behind the purchase, how you plan to use it, and then how you actually used it. Those things can differ, and it's really helpful to be able to refer back to how you used it and how it performed. So I put like performance in a roaster. I'll show you a little bit about what we do as Cropster to look at how coffees are performing in the roaster, keeping records of every roast curve that we do. That's really important. Inventory levels. I, as a green buyer, everybody's got long, everybody's got short. It's as much as you can. That's really important detail of knowing what you have in inventory, what you've contracted, building systems early, particularly if you're on the earlier side of running your business, systems to keep track of what you've got in inventory, what you're going to use it for, comparing it to what your customer anticipating your orders are going to be, what your customer orders are going to be, and staying on top of that. Because we've all been out there and had coffee that's been sitting in 30s position too long. And I personally don't like a bad wee espresso shot. I like to have fresh coffees like I know all of you do. So it's important to pay attention to those little details. It's also going to help you buy the right amounts of the right coffees from your suppliers. The other thing is performance over time. So depending on how long you've had a coffee, seeing, again, Rob referred to this as well, like when you look at the moisture content, water activity of coffee, and you can kind of think like, oh, this is going to be really stable, or maybe it's going to be a little volatile. If these guys are in a position for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, it's nice to also be keeping track of, is the profile changing? How is it behaving differently? Again, if you want to come back to that coffee the following year, you have all of that information available to help inform your decision. And that's a cat also at the Montestor Farming Terrace of Costa Rica. There's a lot of cats. They're cute. So I wanted to share a couple of the systems that we have in place at Stumptown. Stumptown's been around for almost 25 years. I think next year's 1990. No, this is the year. It's 2024. It was started in 1999. So a lot has changed in the company over the years, but one thing that stayed really have a lot of consistency are the coffees that we buy, and our roasting team, and our QC team, and our QA team. And so we've been able to develop systems and get really, really consistent at what we do. And that's kind of hard to do over time. So that consistency, I sort of inherited it when I got there. I mean, I started a little over 6 years ago. We were all these systems set up. And so I thought it might be helpful just to share a little of what we keep track of, and then how that relates to how we work with green coffee suppliers. So upper left That is the pre-ship sample score. We share our cupping scores every time. We share our cupping scores with our importing partners. We cup it in the lab. We send with items of typically approval, but if there's a request for a resample, or if in the rare instance where we might have to reject something, we always send the cupping report. And if we ever have to deal with a sticky situation, we always provide information. And that's really important, really, really important to the importer to be able to have that information. But typically it's approval, it's good news, but still able to share that cupping scores, notes that we had, and they can share it back through the supply chain as well. That can help. The arrival, upper right, this coffee improved while it was on the water. That's always nice, just a little bit. And that's the level of detail that we're sharing with our green coffee partners. Lower left, you'll all recognize that. That's a roast curve for this specific coffee. The way we use these is a few ways. This is not something that we share with the importer partner or producers. Maybe we would if they wanted to know that, but it's not as relevant for the purpose of the purchasing. But in terms of managing our coffees and data consistency is something we use a lot. We have 5 different roasting machines and 2 different roasteries. So we are recording all of our roasts in Cropster and have reference curves that can change daily or weekly, depending on the weather, depending on a lot of factors that we know. But we have a record of the coffees, and particularly when if it's a really special coffee, or something that's really expensive, a micro lot, or a state of origin we bought a little limited quantity of, it's really nice to be able to look back at it year after year. And be able to look at, say, okay, this is how we approached it last year, along with the written notes and kind of the analog experience of the roasters as well. I also want to refer back to another thing that Rob said today. I talked to him about this. I was like, let's talk about your presentation and my presentation. So I thought that was really great. He talked about also noticing how coffee performs in the sample roaster to inform the production roast. And we do that as well, particularly with like a micro lot. With all the coffees we buy, if we buy a micro lot, like we just had a modern pipe that sold out really quickly. And it's just one bag of modern pipe. And so for that, we hadn't had that coffee before. It was a brand new coffee. And so we, Kyle, who runs our QC lab, roasted up a couple different samples, 2 samples in the sample roaster. Obviously, we'd already evaluated it. He's taking notes. He was a production roaster for 12 years, so he knows the coffees really well. He's taking notes, observing the coffees, and then can work with our QA team and with the roasters to develop an approach, because we're roasting on 60 kilos, so it's kind of high stakes and kind of funless. And so we do that, and then we can look at roast curves for sort of similar coffees. Like in that case, we looked at the Pacamara roast curve to also inform how are we going to approach this coffee? How do we think it's going to respond? So we keep a lot of records and we refer to them, and it's really helpful. And then the last thing I wanted to share, again, this is not something that we talk about necessarily with our green suppliers, but it's just an internal system that's helped us get pretty consistent. We have a simplified cupping form to evaluate the roasted product. So we have a 2-person QA team who are doing samples across all of our different blends and single origins, and they do a simple quicker evaluation of the coffee to give feedback on the roast itself. And whether it's within range or out of range or whatever. So obviously we use a lot of Cropster. So that's keeping track, keeping records. We also have handwritten notes and we have lots of email communication, but we try to take good care with the data. I'm not going to get into the keeping track and keeping records around inventory, because I just think that would be kind of boring, but it's important. Boring, but important. Okay, keep track of records. kind of aluminum varnish, say. All right, so the last section is on, or basically know where you fit in. And I think this is really important, something that's close to my heart. Knowing where you fit in the coffee supply chain as a buyer, as a roaster, retailer, and knowing where you fit in if you ever have a chance to go to origin. So this bar, that's ever cocktail, and had a picture pampa in Cajamarca. And I just wanted to make a couple of points on this. One is knowing where you fit in. There's two main things here. You're the buyer. Particularly if you go to origin, people are going to want to sell coffee to you. Okay? They're going to want to sell you coffee. And we always think it's helpful to keep in mind that producers take the majority of the risk. As Camilla said earlier, we can only sell 70% of the coffee that they produce. And they are subject to the vagaries of the climate and pests and rising input costs and all kinds of factors. So it's just really good to be conscientious of not adding more risk to their work. So in the example of like experimental processes or special preparations, or going and giving advice and saying like, oh, you should plant more geisha, or you should plant more such and such. It's easy to go and say things like that, or say like, oh yeah, we love, whatever, blah, 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 fermentation. You can do that. Well, they then take it upon themselves to go down that path. They're assuming all of the risk. And it may or may not work out well. So it's just really good to be conscientious of those types of requests, and to make sure that if you actually do request an experimental process or a special variety or a special preparation, to share the risk. I've seen lots of like contract it, for example. Contract that coffee before they do it. I've seen a few different roasters doing things like this right now. And that's good. That's really good. It's a good way to even things out and be in the game together a little bit more. So I was just kind of referring to this. It's, if you have a chance here at Origin, and if you go to Origin regularly, I just think it's a good idea to go to just really learn. And that might sound trite, but there is a tendency, or there can be a tendency to kind of go and make some big proclamations and be a charismatic buyer with a lot of bravado, and sometimes people even make TV shows about it. But I think it's better to try to be humble and learn. You're going to be blown away by how much everything you meet knows about coffee. So much, so much about coffee. More, I've had that experience over and over again. Just being like, these people know this person knows more about coffee than now my finger. So it's just really good to try to absorb and be there to learn. Exchange information. I think it's really good to talk about how things are going, like if you're from the US, like how things are going in the US market, like what's happening in the coffee market. What are some of the trends? What are some of the things that you're seeing? If you bought the coffee a few times before, like how have you used it? On that note, it's nice to bring a little swag. And so in this picture, this is Rogelio, who's from the El Verdad group in Colombia, in Colombia. We brought, a little mug. That's nice for some gifts. And then also we try to bring something that shows how we're selling their coffee. So in this example, we were able to, for the coffee was on the menu when we went. So we were able to bring a bag of coffee with some coffee. But sometimes if we go and the coffee's not on the menu, we'll bring just the packaging, for example, or some marketing materials. It just kind of closes the loop a little bit more. They can see what you're sharing about altitude, the variety, the producer group, whatever it is. It just kind of makes it a little bit more transparent. And on that note, in terms of marketing collateral, I just think it's a really good idea to ask permission for photos. Yeah, take your photo. Ask permission if you're going to use it in your marketing. Isn't it weird when someone takes your photo and you haven't given permission? Like someone takes it. Have you ever had that happen? It's weird. And so it's cool to ask permission. And even though, that there's very long distances and I mean, right now we'll see how it's used. It's just good practice. It's just really respectful. And as I said earlier, I think it's really important to be careful about promises and purchases and making special requests. Another thing that can happen is, and it's particularly, it can happen at any point, but somebody, and the coffees are amazing. And it's so gorgeous. And everybody is so nice to you. And it's fantastic. We're having the time of your life and tasting coffees that are just dazzling. And you want to buy them, right? And you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I can totally sell this. I can totally sell this coffee. I'm so excited. We're going to buy it. It's going to be amazing. Da, 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 da. And in my sense, it's like, hold on. Don't make purchase decisions. Typically, don't make those purchase decisions because it's so easy to overpromise. And the worst thing is to then come home and not be able to buy. The producer then thinks that they've sold something. The expert thinks they've sold something, and then you get home and you're like, actually, I can really buy 17 micro lots. Like, I don't think I've gotten enough of that. So just be cognizant of that and try to be cool, and you can say, I'm really interested in these coffees, but I think it's good to just kind of hold on. And this is the way that I try to approach it. You're at origin, you can definitely ask for samples. So for sure, I'd love to have some samples sent back. Please send some samples back to the grocery or to the importer and send them to you. So you have that option, but go home. You do all the travels, go home, get over jet lag. So go home, get over jet lag, calm down a little bit, and then do some math. Really, like, what do I actually need? What does the company need? How much do we need? What can we actually pay? How are we going to use this coffee? What's the why behind it? The purpose behind it? And then recup it. Then you're going to have those samples in your lab. Recup it if you can with somebody else. Get some other perspectives, and then make good purchase decisions. Then you're going to be a lot more grounded. And that's a good way to then establish relationship or continue a relationship with suppliers. You've managed expectations and they know what to expect. So let's see. I said a lot of things. I kind of felt like I didn't want to just talk and say all the things and make it seem like I'm, just how much stuff to say, but I guess I did. And yeah, good luck out there, everybody. That is what I had to say about that. I'm happy to take some questions or whatever.